I hope you enjoyed watching the video as much as I did. I am next on the list. I'm the next speaker. Uh, you guys know me here. My name is Sosa, founder of Talks with Sosa, a public speaking platform that caters to mental health and social justice. So today, I will be talking about dismantling the stigma of mental illness amongst ethnic minorities. I almost did it, Sosa. Did what? I asked. I almost took my life. I was on the verge of doing it after I experienced deep, deep depression. Those words sank far deep into my heart, like a huge rock dropped into an ocean. As a journalist, my work revolves around interviewing people, having conversations, and collecting stories. When I write investigative pieces, I sometimes ask myself on my drive home, did that happen? I do not want to conclude until I hear from the villain in as much as I've heard from the victim. I find it a huge privilege to have people open up a part of their lives locked away for so many years. I had the opportunity to interview a man named Reginald. Let's call him Reginald. A Black man of slim build with broad shoulders. He had moved from Uganda to Canada in search of a better life. He never one day anticipated he would be considering taking his life. He had told me the swift transition from summer to fall had taken a huge toll on him, with a few family and friends here in Canada. He was still getting accustomed to the culture here, which he admitted was extremely difficult. I could not but imagine how lonely he must have felt. So I went further to ask if he sought help. And his response was, I didn't want anyone to know I was going through this. He also said, I was in utter disbelief the problem was real because the stigma attached to mental illness is so huge. Reg's story is not out of the ordinary. This is common amongst many new immigrants. Without a doubt, mental illness is increasingly being recognized as a global public health issue, with an estimated prevalence ranging from 18% to 36% worldwide. To take, for example, in more diverse jurisdictions such as Ontario, Canada, in which 26% of nearly 13 million residents identify as visible minorities. I believe it is essential to understand how mental health experiences vary across ethnic groups living within the same macro environment. The strong stigma attached to mental disorders prevents people affected from getting psychological help, and the consequences of stigma are far worse for racial and/or ethnic minorities, since they often experience social adversities such as poverty and discrimination within policies and institutions. A cross-sectional study was done to compare the prevalence of self-reported mental health service use across the four large ethnic groups in Ontario, Canada, which are the white, South Asian, Chinese, and Black groups. So in this study, social demographic characteristics was taking so the age, gender, ethnicity, education, level of income, type of client, years of experience, and location. The study showed that self-reported physician-diagnosed mood and anxiety disorders and mental health services were generally lower among South Asian, Chinese, Black respondents compared to white counterparts. Now that we know the stigma is real, how do we dismantle it? So education. Education is essential to present factual information about the stigmatized conditions, to correct misinformation or contradict negative attitudes and beliefs. So an education campaign can be set up to counter the idea that people with mental illness are violent murderers by presenting statistics that show homicide rates are similar among people with mental illness and the general public. So educational campaigns can also boost the self-esteem of those who have mental illness. So mental health literacy program is also an educational strategy. So primary health education to improve mental health literacy may effectively reduce stigma of school-age children and improve public attitudes without negatively impacting self-stigma. Also, I'd like to talk about contacts. So people who do not have a mental illness or stigmatized conditions have little meaningful contact with those who have these conditions. When that barrier is established, it fosters discomfort, trust, and fear, distrust and fear. Contact interventions overcome these barriers and facilitate positive interaction and connection between the general public and those living with mental illness. Another point I'd like to touch on is peer services, which acts as a counterbalance to discrimination, rejection, and isolation. In terms of peer services, it helps sustain longer periods and more regular treatment utilization. So take, for example, if you want to be consistent at the gym, you are more likely to stay consistent if you go with someone or have an accountability buddy. Another point I'd like to touch on is protest and advocacy, which are carried out at the grassroots level and involve letter writings. So one thing about protest messaging and advocacy is that it can help engage and activate sensitive people who want to engage but have limited knowledge on how to translate their beliefs into actions. I remember when I spoke at the NSAS protest, we had people from different ethnicities show up. It was pretty obvious they wanted to engage. However, they had no idea on how to. I spoke on the use of social media and signing petitions to move things forward. Above all, I think it's also crucial to show empathy and compassion to those going through mental health challenges. I leave you all with this quote today from President Bill Clinton. It says, "Mental illness is nothing to be ashamed of, but stigma and bias shames us all." Thank you.